When a person drops out of care, do you just assume that they didn't get it? Or do you get curious about what story you just told yourself about it? Hi there. I am Greg Venning, and welcome to the Questing Chiropractor, the podcast that helps you run a practice that you love working in, that runs with great systems that set you free, that delivers with beautiful connection and helps you to have time, energy, and money and freedom to be able to enjoy it all. And in this enlightening podcast, Nimrod and I are going to go through 4 key points for you. Number one is the real reason why people drop out of care is really that they didn't get it and what it really is. How to stop converting and start enrolling. How to stop retaining and start ascending. And the simplest skill that changes everything. As always, as you listen to this, if you can think of a friend or colleague who would benefit from it, please send it on to them on either the podcast platform or YouTube that you're watching on. And on either one of those platforms, we'd love some comments, we'd love some likes, we'd love up to a 5-star rating. Thank you. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractic podcast. We help you grow as visionary, vitalistic, and capable chiropractors who are always on. We do things differently as we help to elegantly awaken your innate wisdom within. We help you create robust, predictable, and trustworthy practices that serve oceans of people and yet still have free time for yourselves and your families. We use neuroscience to deliver better business results so that you can get greater, deeper, and more effective impact in more ways. We are Questing Chiropractors, and this is our story.
Well, Greg, it's a pleasure to be conversing with you about our podcast once again.
Yeah, lovely to be back. It feels like too long since I've been on. I do the editing in the background. I put the intro onto all of them and I love them. And I'm happy to be back on.
Yeah, it's always a deep pleasure just really conversing and drifting and seeing what comes up and just the sharing and co-creating space. So thank you for your time and for being here.
Yeah, and you too, Nimrod, and you.
So let me know what's the topic that we will be looking at from various perspectives.
So it's one that I know I struggled with for a long time and am still in the process of getting, and that's helping our practice members to get it. And we hope that when they get it, that they can stay, they pay, they refer, they get the miracles of chiropractic for them and their families. Sometimes people might put the frame on it of helping patient or making patients get it. We might suggest that we help, we facilitate, we guide people towards a state of getting it on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
So let's figure out the differences in those.
Yeah, there's quite a few differences, isn't there? And tell me, why is this relevant? What's the emotional side of this for our listeners?
I think this is one of the underlying roots of most of the frustrations that chiropractors feel. Certainly the frustrations I've felt and sometimes still do feel over time is if people drop out of care, if they're not referring their friends and family in, if they're not sticking to their care plan, if they're not kind of flowing with you, the assumption, and often a largely a true assumption, is that they haven't got it. They don't understand the message. They don't understand why chiropractic is important in their life. They don't understand why time and repetition is important. And that's all part of this getting it that we're aiming for.
Yeah. Have you got someone that comes to mind that could exemplify this for us?
I've got a very specific person. I think of it as an interesting way is, as we grow as chiropractors, we help more people, a higher percentage of people over time to get the message as we get better at it. And we'll talk through the steps of getting it. And then there's sometimes these recurring themes that happen throughout our professional existence. And there's one person who comes to mind. She started with us with care for a few years ago. And some reason I just didn't hit it off with her. We didn't quite gel. I felt I couldn't help her to get it. And interesting thing was, she stayed under care for various reasons. She started seeing one of our associates and did really well and finished a phase of care. And then she stopped and I thought, she didn't get it. That's why she dropped out. A few years later now, she started again, and there were many other things in her life other than chiropractic was the reason that she dropped out, but she came back in and she's done another phase with us. And I thought, she didn't get it. And I recently heard a phone call conversation at the front desk where she was simply asking for a practice that's more convenient for her, but clearly chiropractic has stuck with her far more than I thought it did. Yeah.
Fascinating, isn't it? All those stories we tell within ourselves, and maybe that's really part of the clue of what it means for them to get it or not. So I know that we'll be talking about various angles on this. One of them is, as you mentioned, what it means when we say you've got to get it, that it's their responsibility, and if they don't get it, that's why they do care like we want them to. And as you mentioned there with that story with this woman, us getting them is also part of the story of what it means for us to get them. And then there's also this interpersonal space of the two of us getting each other together on the same page. And I think your story really highlighted all of those things, and maybe comes around to the fourth point, which is, what about you, chiropractor? Are you first? I think those four main points are pretty good for us to cover if we can go through those.
Yeah, and I think the overall theme, if listeners want to think of the overall theme that comes through is that we're doing this as a relationship, not a transaction. This isn't us doing something to them. It's not a short-term transactional, going one way, money coming the other way only thing. If it's a relational nature, it's two human beings being human together with a specific purpose, with specific roles. But it's much richer than a transactional thing that we do. And that's why it's not a patient. And that's why we don't make them get it. Yep. There's far more to it. That it's far more enriching than that.
Yeah, so I think you pretty much just knocked that first one, on the head. But, there are chiropractors out there who work in this kind of really tribal, lecturing, didactic, transactional model, in which to them saying the patient has to get it makes total sense.
And if they're serving people where that's the mode of being that they're used to, then if that helps them to get chiropractic care for a while and to start taking on new perspectives and new experiences based on freeing up the body from subluxation, being more connected to themselves, then the usefulness in that, I might suggest that it's going to be short-lived at some point, where a relational transaction would be longer-lived. At some point, people are going to get beyond the transactional nature, especially if we're helping to reconnect the man or person, the physical with the spiritual. If you're really going to the deep level, they're going to outgrow that at some point, sooner or later. Where a relational space, we can grow together, and that's where we have the chance to get to the truth of what lifetime care really is. Yeah. So I think there you're now jumping to why are we here? What are we doing this for? But let's first, have a bit of a deeper look at what your point is around. You've got to get it. Where we point the finger at the other person. So how would you define this space for us? What does this look like? So once a chiropractor feels they have a handle on that, they've got it. They've got an idea of what this chiropractic message is, what we might call the big idea is. Then this is idea of how do we translate, how do we transmit, how do we help to fill the void of what the big idea is for that person in their mind. So how do we help them to get it so that they suddenly have this big idea, and that they then begin to take actions based on that idea. And we presume those actions would be to stay, pay, and refer for a lifetime.
Yep.
If they really got it, they would do chiropractic on an ongoing basis for the rest of their life. And they would refer everybody, and they'd have all their kids checked straight away.
Yep. So that's all reliant on the premise. And I think this is where a great place to start of you defining the terms for yourself. What does it mean for you, the chiropractor, to get it? To understand it, to have those concepts, those ideas, that knowledge around what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely, because the more, I guess the first part is secure, and the second part is confident, and the third part is, or the other part is competent. So if you're secure in your data and your knowledge, and you can relax into it, and you can demonstrate competence, and you can exude confidence, then you're going to allow a space in which this other person can figure out what it is for them, rather than you transmitting this exact message to them in an exact way. And you touched on the idea of stories earlier, and that's where stories and analogies can be so useful, because you're really just touching on what I believe is are concepts that people already hold in some way. And what we're doing is we're revealing how this thing we call chiropractic matches that thing in a way that they already know.
Isn't that beautiful? So really drawing out of them the story, the truth that is lying underneath there. So that's a little bit of the skills, the mastery that we may have. But let's sit a little bit more with the chiropractor and what it means for the chiropractor to get it. So, we've touched on maybe some values, some understanding, some deep truths. What would it look like for a chiropractor to do the practice and get in there and get their hands dirty of really understanding what it means for me to get it myself as a chiropractor?
So I guess it has to do with a multi-dimensional thing. Like, do you need to have some data, some research, some literature that gives you some confidence in some of the principles of chiropractic, that time and repetition matter, that brain, spine, and nervous system work together, that nervous system coordinates and regulates everything in the body, and that any interference to that system must necessarily create states of dis-ease. And if states of dis-ease persist, they can lead to states of disease and pathology. And any data, if you need the data to help that to become real to you, then that's going to be something that helps you to get it. If you're more experientially based and it's your own experience of having subluxations cleared and being more connected and having less dis-ease and feeling mind, body, and more return to states of high well-being, then that's going to help you to get it. And maybe it's a combination of both. I think the conceptual understanding of it is one thing, and some people will resonate with that quite quickly. I think it's a very experiential thing for most people, and I think it's an allied between the education we need, because we've been educated in institutions for good or for ill that have a huge academic slant, and that's absolutely valued and needs it. Sometimes it becomes a crutch, and then getting the experience of it. And sometimes there's institutions that don't really exude the amazingness of the art of chiropractic. So maybe some chiropractors haven't actually experienced chiropractic care in a high enough form for a long enough time to have the experiential understanding of it. But I'd say those would probably be the two. If we can marry those two, that's where we then start to get it. And I'll just define the idea that there's never in it. It's a process of getting the next level of it as you go.
So maybe we can reframe this entire conversation to something like almost sometimes getting towards it.
Because the higher up you go, the more you realize it's like, oh man, there's a whole thing. So I've been talking in practice this week, and for whatever reason, the phrases come out of my mouth at least 3 or 4 times already. It's only Wednesdays we're recording this. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I think I'm starting to get the hang of
it. Or fooling yourself that you are, anyway.
I think I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Get your head out of it, and you realize you're not at all. Sorry, not to undermine you as a technique.
No, still a baby. Happy to still be a baby, and happy to be ever advancing in what I do.
So I want to bring this around to a practical point, and we're starting here with the point of if you're wanting them in your practice to get it, then maybe one of the first steps is to look at you yourself. Have you got it? Or are you in the process of getting it? A quick little story. I've got a couple of new associates with me, and one of them has graduated from one of those extremely mechanistic limited schools where they hardly touch the spine, let alone adjust subluxations. They wouldn't use that word. And he's really open-minded and brilliant, and you can see that his thinking has not been expanded to this way that we're discussing now. And so I challenge him to look at it from a more chiropractic perspective. So as a quick example, we're flooding him with first visits so that he can build his practice and get the practice, get the rungs on the board, basically. And so he comes to me and he goes, I don't quite understand how this one is a chiropractic case. There was someone who he thought has some vestibular stuff, that's BPPV for a technical term. It's like, how can we have an impact on that? What is it that we can do? And so he's open to looking at this question of getting it, but he doesn't quite connect the dots. And so I challenge him and say, let's have a look at it from a segmental, biomechanical, neurological, holistic perspective. What would you come back with? And so he goes hunting, hungry, and then he comes and throws some ideas at me or frustrations that he can't quite get it. But he's doing the process. And I think that's important. And so what I want to relate, if you chiropractor feel like this is my hang up, I want them to get it, but I don't get it. Just rewind to the whole thing that Greg said, going from the holistic person to the nervous system, brain body connection, to the subluxation, to the adjustment, and feel for yourself which part are you frustrated with? Which part are you feeling brings up some emotion for you? And then look at it with curiosity. Try to find the clarity for yourself there. And similarly, if you are not, if you're the practical, hands-on person, like Greg said, then start to look at the people who are coming in and ask those questions that I've been asking of my associate with fresh eyes, with curiosity, searching for clarity. And through that, you're going to get the confidence and the certainty and the ability to be able to communicate with more effectiveness around that. So when these people come in with strange sort of things, or even run of the mill sort of things, can you explain it? Have you got it? Your understanding of chiropractic and how it makes sense for what you're doing with this person and for them as well.
And it's the elegant simplicity is when we know we've got a semblance of it, is when we don't have to use jargon, when it requires not many words, when you can put a story or a metaphor to it. If you don't know what you're actually reaching for, if you don't even know what it looks like to get it as a chiropractor, when you're not using fancy words, when you're not using long-winded explanations, and when you're using stories and metaphors, you're at a level of knowingness. It's not even knowledge. It's a knowingness that you're then starting to put into ways that are not exactly what you've been fed. You're not just regurgitating facts anymore.
Absolutely.
Now you're at a state of beginning to understand and being able to relate your understanding. That's something to reach for.
Yeah, beautiful. So I don't want to jump too far to the communicating bit, but the transmission to cause transformation. It's that incorporating that embodiment, that ability to really have it within you and let it be imparted from who you're being and how you're communicating. So is there something else there with when we're focusing on the chiropractor and, have you got it yourself, the chiropractor, that we should look at before we just move on to the next point here?
Yeah, are you getting checked and adjusted as necessary on a frequency that matches your outcomes? Are you literally getting it so that you can feel in your body, you can know in your body this change that is possible, the fun parts of it and maybe the not so fun, the retracing, unwinding parts, and being able to go through those and doing it for more than just pain relief and getting into functional change and feeling how it enriches your life. That's a huge part of getting it as well, is your personal experience of it.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for bringing that. That's really, sometimes our best way to get it is to make sure we have congruency and integrity around what we're doing and saying, and to deepen our experience of it. So really important. Brilliant. And, I think a bit of a caution around this, if you don't get it, that contradiction is going to be a point of destruction. If you say one thing and do another, if you try and sell without actually owning it, those contradictions, they're going to come to the surface.
And that was a point in my career where it was hurting me. And one of the things I did to move myself beyond that and to transcend that was to go through a 12-week phase of care, getting adjusted twice a week, and traveling to another practice that wasn't convenient for me, to somebody who I knew but I wasn't overly friendly with, and paying for my care at full rate at a place where I didn't know whether I could afford it, because that was a money hang up to me. And so by doing it and getting it for myself, getting the chiropractic care I needed, I could then own the value far more. And it was interesting how as I went through that, the money problem became not such a money problem, and my practice started to grow. Purely because I was putting myself into the point of facing the contradiction and looking to transcend the contradiction by being more integritous and in integrity with what I was saying. I put my deeds to match that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's a point. It highlights a contradiction for us if we're not putting in the time to get adjusted as we are recommending, as is appropriate for us as an individual human
Yep.
being, or if we're not putting in the money. And I've in as a chiropractor, there's been times when I've insisted on paying because I wanted that fair exchange, and when chiropractors have refused, which they often do, I put that money aside and I donate it to a chiropractic cause. And
Yep.
so, maybe that's a good way for us to test ourselves. If that hurts, if you don't see the value of that, then the bottom line here is the level to which you get it is the level to which they'll get it.
Exactly.
So let's move on from putting the chiropractor at the center of the universe to
You mean one not?
to getting the other one, getting them. What are we
Yeah.
looking at here? How does we put a definition of boundary around this?
So the slightly trite but really true thing that comes up here is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, or they feel how much you care is probably more accurate. And so really that's taking the time to see what's beyond the surface layer symptomatology they may present. If they're coming on a wellness basis, then it's usually easier to get to those drivers, and then trying to just sink down with them and really try and get to the sense of identity that those drivers then create. And if that sounds really deep for you as you're listening to it, you don't quite get what that means, that's okay. Let's get the idea that what they come into your office with is urgent for them, but I'm going to suggest that it's superficial compared to their deeper drivers and what's actually important for them. So the difference between the urgent and the important. And if we can sink down with them and try and discover those with them, then we're starting to get them. We're starting to understand them in their lives, in their context. So if that's sounding a little conceptual, let's get very specific. A woman coming in who's in her mid-30s who might have, let's say, headaches, might be a mum. And with the headaches she's getting, it might be impacting her role as mother, and she might be more snippy with her kids than she'd like to be. So we're starting to get from symptom to a driver to a sense of identity of what kind of mum am I when I'm snipping at my kids. Now, you don't have to jump to that at the first visit, but acknowledging that within you and resonating that with her is going to help you to get her better. And so if we've got some of step one, if we're on the path to getting it and we're on the path to getting her, now those two come together in a magical space where we can relate to her, the message to her in ways that are going to make sense to her in her life situation, in her circumstance there and then.
Yeah. So before, again, we move to that, which is the space that binds us, let's have a little bit more of a look at her or him or them, whichever one is coming in. And I think maybe a useful way to think about this is sometimes they say the thing that is the loudest alarm, the brightest light, the most superficial thing. And as you said, it represents something underneath, and it helps us to name that to help them get it, to see their world from their point of view. And then also to take a bit of a stab for them of what we know of them at what it actually could be representing that they're not aware of, that they're not naming, that they haven't put any thought or attention to. And all of this brings up two things for me, which I always think about, which is what is your intrinsic driver, you, the person sitting in front of me? And then also, what are the extrinsic drivers, depending on who you are and what stage you are in your own development in your own life. So how would you look at this if we're kind of putting the person in a little bit of a package, so that we're not talking about the relationship yet, but we're just trying to get to get them. What are some action steps we can take here?
So the first one is, if we're at literally visit one, is holding some space after they've given us the main superficial complaint. And remember, when we say superficial here, we don't mean it's not a big thing for them. We're not trying to minimize their pain and their suffering. But once they've told us about that in the first little bit, just holding silence and just seeing if they're ready to drop down, to go from I'm here for headaches, and they do this and they do this, and they start here and they do this, and it happens when I do this. And if we can hold silence, and that's silence in terms of words, but also silence in terms of body language, and see if they're ready to drop down into, oh, and it's getting me down and I can't be with my kids. And if they're ready to drop down in those first few moments, you're there enough already. That's enough to move forward in the rest of a visit one, and you've already got a sense of driver to move you along and to kind of go, cool, I'll stand with you and let's walk a path together to help you to get that deeper thing better. If you haven't got that, or they're not ready to drop down into that, or you get uncomfortable and you fill the silence, as we often do, then sometimes as simple as, in the history form they might have completed, have you got a space for hobbies? Have you got a space for them to tell you whether they have kids and how old they are and what work they might do or might have done? And already from that, you're starting to gather a picture of this person. And this is so different from what you might find in a medical setting where it's the broken arm in room 3. And again, the trite thing we hear is, well, we've got to know what person has the condition more than what condition the person has. And we often pay lip service to that, especially if we're using the word patient, we're minimizing who that person is in front of us. So yeah, trying to build a picture in our minds quite explicitly of what is this person's life circumstance and how are they showing up and how can I show up with them?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things here, before we look at how we should communicate in order to help them get it better, or how we should relate or connect or any of those things, or rapport, it's really leaning into empathy and compassion in a way of, let me just leave who I am being at the moment and go and step into their shoes and see the world there. And imagine, this woman that has sciatica, low back pain, whatever it is, dysmenorrhea, what it means for her that she's not telling me in all those different areas of her life. And what also would help her in order to improve what she's doing, to set onto a better trajectory, rather than continuing to go into degeneration and decay that we know is so common in the society we live in, to move into the natural state of wholeness and love. And how can we take that one small step that's going to help her get that and keep moving forwards?
Yeah, and we hold that bigness with us, and we don't, and we hold back on vomiting it back at them as quickly as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
We just it's about being in the space.
Yep.
and holding it within us and allowing it to then form a connection as it naturally will.
Yeah. And so, just to touch on a couple of the ideas we have within Quest that may be really relevant here if you haven't thought about them. One is that we're not here to convert. And I know that we do a lot of discussion around that. We're here to inspire and evoke and elicit and raise within and pull from within and elucidate. We're here to enroll them in a better future. And so what would that look like if we do that rather than convert? Part of that is allowing that space and all the time repeatedly going back to creating agreements by permission. That permission opens up that space and just allows them to be raw and vulnerable and real, and see their life with fresh eyes. I think some of those things are so powerful. What I will say is the parts that you mentioned, Greg, about hobbies or different parts of our lives. So often I'm coaching chiropractors, and when I ask them what different areas of their lives could you ask them about, they don't have a systematic way to categorize them. So if you're looking for a procedure to do, apart from that bit that I just mentioned about the space and the compassion and the empathy and the warmth and the humanity, then start with thinking about what are the different categories that we have within our lives in general, and then how could I explore that with empathy with the person who's in front of me, rather than just being satisfied with low back pain, sciatica, dysmenorrhea, migraine, whatever it is.
Yeah. And So much of that comes out when we do a proper history with the person, and going beyond just the medical history tick box form and the location, onset, duration, frequency, intensity, old carts type main complaint thing. And again, one of the procedures we use within Quest, mainly to get a space of curiosity and to start drawing from this person some of what's happened over time, so we can dimensionalize their experience of life with them, is what's happened from when they were conceived. Were their parents like pre-pregnancy, pregnancy? What was their birth like? And whether it's a 90-year-old in your practice or you're seeing a new baby, this has clinical relevance. The data on that is solid, but far more than that, it's how does it start to open them up for them to become curious about themselves while you're doing it, and then we enter into the space where we get to know the different dimensions of them, and they get to have to rebuild a picture of their own space and place right now with you. And the magic with that is they're doing it with you. You're probably the first person that they've done this with, and already now you're getting them as they're re-getting themselves. There's a magical thing that happens as we do that with them, and it doesn't have to take long.
No.
And you're not there to strong arm and convince. Some people are open to some dimensions more than other dimensions. You're there to enroll, and they're enrolling in their own story again, which is really powerful in a much deeper, more meaningful way.
Beautiful. Yeah, one of the questions or sets of questions that I really love here is, once they've vomited their symptoms, is just to step back and to say to them, I understand, and I'd like to have a look at something a bit bigger. I'm really curious, what's your perspective on your own life and on life in general for you? And just acknowledging what they've brought and using the word curious and about your life, it gets some wonderful, crazy responses. And it really allows me to lean in a non-judgmental way. And I think this is the point of caution here. I've seen some chiropractors go, yeah, I get it. You're a mum, and this sciatica is stopping you from bending down and picking up your kids. And the mum is like, whoa, no, actually, no, I can do that because I see myself as a tough person. It's just more that, I want to go back to work and I need to be sitting all day, and I'm really concerned about how that's going. So the caution is, don't jump to conclusions in here when we're trying to get them.
Yep. Don't just categorize them in the first few seconds as every mum who has sciatica. This is Nosipo Tlamini, who is unique and specific in this space, in this time, in this world right now. And let's find out what's happening with this mum, with this thing happening in her leg, in her life circumstance.
Yeah, beautiful. So I think the key takeaway here is, when we're trying to get them, there's an order and a structure to doing that. The more we have that, the more we can do this brilliantly and fluidly and with ease. So bring that order and that structure into what you're doing. Leave your own judgments and baggage. And part of that stepping of the order is stepping into their shoes.
Yep. So if we do a quick recap, we've spoken about the chiropractor getting it, and now we've spoken about us getting them. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
and
powerful two steps already.
Yeah,
so powerful 2 steps.
Yeah, and almost like poles, and between two polarities, there's a tension. So let's look at that tension.
Yeah.
What's that third space?
So the third space is that that relational space where it now starts coming together, and we're discovering what the big picture is, what the chiropractic message is in relation to this person at this time, as we are in this time. So the same way that we are a unique person at any moment, the adage is that you can't step into the same river twice. The way we're getting it is constantly changing. The way we might have delivered a specific message to a practice member in the morning will be different in the afternoon because we've changed. And they're changing at every moment as well. So every visit they're coming into us, you can see them as quite a new person. So as we're continually drip feeding the little bits of the message that we deem most useful at that time through ideally through question asking and drawing from rather than just didactic telling, we're discovering a new dimension of the story with them as they go. So our version of how we describe things never stays the same. There might be similar stories, similar ways of doing things. But I bet you if you're a chiropractor who's been out for more than 5 years, if you look back 5 years, the way you relate it now is very different from 5 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, maybe even a month ago.
I should hope so. I hope I'm getting better.
Yeah.
Right? That's about
That would be
me.
very disheartening.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I hope I look back with embarrassment.
Yeah. Um, and so it's that space of us getting it together in the context of this person's life and me as a practitioner and a person in this context of my life right now. How am I getting it right now? And so it's always changing, always evolving, always exciting. That's what I love about this part is some people would sometimes say, Greg, like, do you get bored of doing the same thing every day? It's like, do I do the same thing every day? Again, like I would be really disheartened if I was.
Yeah.
It might look from the outside like I press on certain spaces and I ask certain questions, and some of them might rhyme, but I very much hope that they're not the same.
Can I just stop you there? If a chiropractor listening to this feels like they're a factory machine worker doing the same thing over and over and over again, because I know there are many of you out there, what should they do, Greg?
I think the first thing is look at the links below the show notes here and give us a call and see how we can help you.
Please. You have such a gift to share and to impact the world. And it's actually not a big change to get you to see this with fresh eyes. And it does often take the help of this expertise of transformation.
Yeah. Having somebody not just put you onto a 12-week course of watching a few videos and getting told a few procedures to do. Right. Sometimes that can light a fire. Very often it just kicks the can down the road. Usually it's leaning into a space where, maybe getting a few procedures and a few seeds of scripts to spark something new. And it's about then talking to somebody about what that means to you, so we can help to help you to rediscover a new perspective that lights you up again.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long. It does take some emotional labor to get there. And my nudge to you would be, your life is so worth it that sitting and doing the same thing day after day and feeling bored with it is not worth your life potential. And there are people in your community who need you to be functioning at a higher level. And we owe it to them as professionals to do that.
Absolutely. And I think that it's probably taking more of your life and your emotional labor to keep decaying in this direction rather than doing the short investment in yourself to be able to move on to a totally different path that's going to help you soar. So enough of that detour. Let's get back to the relationship, which is what we're talking about anyway, right? So how do we build skills and mastery around relating to this person who's sitting in front of us in order to really help us get them and them get us and all of us getting it together in small incremental steps that take monumental leaps?
So let's clarify those first two things is, to be able to get to this space, you've got to be at a space where you're getting it and you're feeling more safe and secure in some of the knowledge that you're getting, and you're feeling more competent in your skills and maybe the experience you've had as getting adjusted and doing your skills with time and repetition. You're also relating to a person in front of you. You're bringing that in. And in that relating space, you're looking to draw from them the genius that already lies within them, the understanding of some of the principles that they might already have that they haven't thought of yet, that they haven't drawn from yet. And in that space, we're always in a space of curiosity. So I wonder what question would be useful to ask in this context. And we might have themes. You might want to help them to connect some of the dots of brain, spine, nervous system, and time and repetition, and the different stresses. And so those can be some keys and some almost categories of understanding you're looking to awaken within them. But far more than that, it's about sometimes being completely silent until a good question comes up. It's about asking the person, not how are you today, but maybe more, what are you noticing? Because that question, what are you noticing, is you leaning into their experience of life. And then being able to bring forth that richness of your understanding to see how this chiropractic message already ties within the themes of their life, and where does that already fit, instead of here's something I need you to know.
Yeah. So just on that, a bit of a caution. If you're forcing a message, it's kind of like force feeding a goose to fatten up the liver. It doesn't feel good and it doesn't taste so good, and it's not so ethically good either. Allow it to flourish from the inside out, which is vulnerable because it goes off script in a way. But lean into where the person's at, and remember that we are here to help them remember they're an expression of life, and of the wonder and wholeness of who they are. And this is their journey. This is their quest that you're collaborating and assisting them in. And so the question is, how can I remove some of that filter and dust and heaviness that has been loaded on them? It's kind of like sculpting. You remove the outside till you get to the brilliance of the inside. Chiropractors, it's like removing a subluxation and allowing things to flow naturally, and just leaning into that wonder of when that happens rather than forcing it.
I've been playing around from a marketing perspective for a long time of this idea of this before and after transformation that we seek to help people to have in practice. And in the beginning, if you're listening to this, the before and after transformation might be in pain and suffering to out of pain and suffering. And that's a really powerful transformation. I like the transformation of people going from scared of their body, of the because of an ignorance of what symptoms actually mean, to a curiosity and a confidence in their ability to move through life. And if we can hold wherever this before and after is for them, and there's higher levels of after than that we can always grow into. Like you were talking about the magnificence of their life as this after state. There's an infinite amount of things we could ask, or probes we could have, or conversation starters we could use, and not forcing it is the biggest part of that, allowing that to emerge, because so often they'll come to it when they come out with that inevitable question of, is there some exercise I could do to help this along? Or is there something I shouldn't be doing? Try and grasp what they're actually getting to. Is there an exercise I could be doing? Maybe they're asking for self-empowerment. Maybe they're asking and they're saying, I want to do more on this path of healing. Maybe they're saying, this is really expensive and I really need to do stuff for myself and I can't take on care. But so don't ignore the exercise question. However, try and explore what's underneath that. And then you're really helping to raise the level of vibration and understanding.
Yep. Beautiful, beautiful. And I think a lot of that is the respect, the dignity that we have for the person who's in front of us, which is really important. And remember, not all of your people are going to be at the same level of understanding health, of looking at their life, but also, as I mentioned before, of those motivations that they may have. There's some people who are going to be really motivated, kind of like by an army general, shouting at them, in a really loud voice. There's others who are going to be more motivated by being able to look at what the traditions and the cultures and the impulses, the duties of the group are. And then, maybe people are looking more for mastery of themselves, for those things that help them be able to measure their progress. We may look at some metrics or things like that. And then, there's going to be people who raise to different levels and maybe are looking at health in their body from being able to function and perform better in all sorts of different areas of their life, like we mentioned before, and some who feel that this is what they want to do in order to be their best self in terms of who they're being for the world. So remember to find out where they're at, and this is a discovery that we do over and over again, and communicate. Communicate means to come together, to relate together, to discover it in that person, and really clarify, as you said, great with that great example, what this actually signifies and means for them, rather than you making your assumptions around that.
Yeah. You delved into there. I want to take it one step deeper. Is communicate comes from the root of commune, and commune means to come together at a spiritual level. So when we are communicating, we're not spouting words at them. It's what do we actually resonate instead of what you repeat? What are you resonating? You might use similar words, but it's what are you resonating towards them with empathy, with connection, embracing their wholeness and your wholeness in that moment together. If that sounds very big to reach towards, then starting with empathy and understanding, start there. That's a big enough space on its own that'll lead you to gorgeous places.
Yeah, and I would actually say there's a step before that, which is, in the first point we made was, how do you get it? So part of that is, what is it you're getting around chiropractic and health and where you want to take people, define those things. And then from there, what does that mean for this person? Having a bit of an exploration with this person around, hey, for me, my mission here in this practice is to be able to help the entire community live without any limits for the rest of their life. What does that actually mean for you when I bring that to you? So seeing how their perspective of the world, their values, their mission, their purpose in life, where does that overlap with yours? And be really curious and empathetic and compassionate. Leave your baggage behind, as we mentioned before, as you step into that coming together. That is a spiritual practice, doing that together, and doing it with a lot of earnest desire to genuinely understand them and to help them, to collaborate, to assist in their quest, their journey with you in your practice in this very moment.
And to listeners, there was a nugget of gold that Nimrod just dropped there, because that was enrollment on a whole new level. We started with enrolling them in a vision of themselves, a more complete vision of themselves, of where they are and where they could go. And that was just enrolling them in a vision with you, in a mission with you, to see on what level they are or aren't on that. Some people are on the thing of like, nope, this is just for me. And other people will go, that's amazing. How could I help you to check more people? And so that's enrollment. And ascension is what we talk about in Quest quite a lot, is helping people to ascend through different levels of care and different levels of being, and sharing your mission statement with them, and just seeing where that takes you in an open way that you're not attached to the outcome is a whole nother level of enrollment.
Yeah, beautiful. So bit of a caution on this one, as we have in the others. If your communication is shouting and didactic and lecturing, that will work for some people, but a lot of people will not like that. Similarly, because that's outside in, if you're looking for an educational schedule that is outside in to make sure that all of them get it, on visit 1 we do this, visit 2 we do this, visit 6 we do this, they come to this class or they don't go past jail, then that'll work for some people who reverberate at that level, and you may find that it doesn't work for all. So it's about adaptability and resilience. Wow, chiropractors, we're throwing in a lot of chiropractic philosophy here today.
Yeah. This is just about people getting it and staying under care, right?
Yep, it is indeed.
Yep.
Anything to round up there? Quick takeaway on that one?
I think that what it all rounds back to is after we've gone through the steps of what are you doing to get it? How are you helping to get them? How are you relating that together? It's this question of what are we resonating? Who are we being in that moment? And it's really the self-discovery we're doing while we're discovering the it, the other, us together is the me. And that'll round you straight back to the it, because when you're different, you will get it at a whole new level. There'll be another level that you're able to reach towards. So this is an ongoing evolutionary cycle. And I think that's an exciting thing in practice. That is an amazing thing to be able to play with in our life, and we call it a profession, and we get remunerated for it, and we get so much reward for it, and it is so beautiful because it's our own self-ascension and our self-enrollment along the way.
Wow. Do you want to explore that briefly, how that may look for a chiropractor in a way that is going to help them help more people in their practice on the path, the trajectory, the journey, the quest that they're on?
So let's go back to maybe that practitioner who's a little bit bored, a little bit stale, feeling a bit stale in practice. They know there was a spark, maybe the spark's gone. Maybe they're beat down by having to deal with associates or deal with their own practice, or people not getting it anymore. And you play with one of these ideas you've done here, and you have one person who gets it with you a little bit. Notice that excitement that rekindles that spark within you. And maybe you haven't lost it. Maybe your momentum behind it just slowed slightly, or maybe you haven't. And this is just another time to go back to noticing the enthusiasm that this brings out within you, that little childlike sense of joy. And celebrate that with your team at the end of a shift. If you're solo in practice with a colleague or a spouse or a friend, and share that spark. Because when we share the spark, when we've realized it, it's almost like we did for that practice member where we said, what are you noticing? And then they can often bring through what they're actually noticing, and maybe they hadn't thought about it as clearly. But when we're then doing it and we're sharing it, not only are we sharing our spark and our excitement, but we're going to amplify it. And sharing even the littlest nuggets is so powerful in bringing through this childlike exuberance again that you once had and is still within you, or maybe you are exuding, and it's great to share with other people, because that's a different level of you. And the more we can share in it, the more the energy comes into everything else we do. We've recently had a quester who did a big change in her practice, and numbers were a struggle. Getting new people door through was a struggle. Referrals were always consistently low, and things changed in the practice materially, but nobody outside would have known that. But her energy, her point of attraction has shifted and changed, and she's literally just under doubled her practice in the space of 3 weeks, and she's now booked out with referrals. And those people who are coming in had no knowledge of that. But what's happened is her point of attraction, her energy, her spark has returned.
Yeah.
And that's shifted everything for her.
Wow.
That energy is that hidden driver of growth.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Remember, chiropractors, I'm going to throw in a bit more philosophy. Force is what connects intelligence to matter, to make matter do its thing. The level that we are resonating at and reverberating at is what has an influence in and around us. It all starts with you. And I promise this is the last one. It's above down, inside out. It's from the inside. It always is. And so, I mentioned in the very beginning that there are levels of contradictions or ceilings that we hit. Here's the difficult task. Maybe it's about you.
The inconvenient truth, the real inconvenient truth, because it's the one we know is true.
Not inconvenient for me to say, maybe inconvenient for you to hear. But this is what makes us quest, right? We are happy to hold you to what is difficult, but right, and transformative. And as a result of that, you and your life, your practice and your people are at the potential and the possibility of transforming. And it just takes that spark.
So if you're listening to this and that's sparked you at all, lean in, click on the show notes, have a chat to us. No strings attached, just like we talk about our practice members. We're not here to convert or cajole. You'll be amazed at what can happen with some simple but powerful tweaks, and it can shift things in a short amount of time, and what a journey that can set you on.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So I just want to round this off in this way, just like we've been talking about your practice members not getting it and how it's their fault. We here at Quest are never about pointing the finger at you and saying, you didn't get it, what we do. We're here about lighting that spark. Not even lighting it, about removing the interference to what is always there, the truth that is lying within that, and allowing that to shine. And for many of you, this will resonate, and we are here to help you transform on the journey, the quest, the trajectory you're on. And if it's not for you, then we're okay with that. There are other services out there. So Greg, just to finish off, for people listening to this, what are 3 basic bottom line action steps they can take or consider taking one of those things, not all of them by any means, in order to help their practice rise up to the next level on this theme that we're looking at?
I think one of the things is what you spoke about earlier was when you think of the conceptual it that you're trying to get, try and find where you feel a pullback to the idea that we are beings being human, that we have an innate intelligence within us, that the brain, spine and nervous system, especially the nervous system, control or coordinates and regulates the functions of the body, and any interference that must necessarily create a dis-ease within that mind body, which then leads to suboptimal, not just health outcomes, but life outcomes. And adjusting and correcting that subluxation must necessarily return higher levels of function, so higher levels of life. If you listen to that, if there's a pullback on that, lean into that pullback. Go and find out what makes you uncomfortable about that and go and look into it. Ask some mentors. Reach out and ask us that specific question. I'd say that would be a powerful first step. A second step is the empathy. Is then with the person in front of you, what new empathy can you open up to? And it doesn't have to take long. This isn't about hearing about their mums, dogs, brothers, aunts, poodle. And if it is, it can be in a very short amount of time, and you can listen to it with love and empathy, and you can be there with them. But none of these things have to take huge amounts of your time. When we're really connected, we can go deep really quickly. They'll take us there. And then number 3 is celebrate your transformation. Celebrate how different you are now to how different you were yesterday, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. And yeah, we might look back on how we were back then and laugh at that, but celebrate that shift and that change. And I think through those as 3 steps, you can't help but notice your own elevation. And if you notice your own elevation, you notice your momentum, and then go with that momentum.
Beautiful. I know my people in practice tomorrow are going to feel the boom of your words and resonance and reverberation of your energy. So a very heartfelt thank you to you, Greg, and listeners. If there is something there that resonated with you, we are here for you.